Hey everyone! I've been out shopping a little bit for the old Deutz 6006, so now we can go ahead and carry on with this project. So now I really should have everything we need to pick this project up where we left off the last time. Which, if you haven't seen the previous videos on this project, I'm going to leave a link for those down in the description if you want to check them out. But we had gotten to a point where really there is just a whole bunch of small things all around that we have to take care of. And one of them is right here where I had remounted this whole hydraulic block and I was ready to put a seat on it. But the old original seat that was in here, that was in a terrible state. And I was briefly looking into maybe fixing that up, but I quickly found that a brand new seat just really didn't cost much at all. So it's just not worth spending the time and effort on that. I just went and got a new one. And here it is, without the cushions for now, of course. But this should fit right onto these original mounting bolts. Yep, there we go. Easy as that. And this is also adjustable for the angle, so it should suit this weird mounting angle that we have on this. So let's just see if we can do that. I assume we just have to take these two bolts out. Oh yeah, that's really all there is to it. Should be right around there. Sweet. Right, well, with the angle sorted out, I was thinking that maybe I would have an issue here with the dipstick for the hydraulics. The old seat had a hole cut out in it so you could still get to this plug. This one is covering it a little bit, but it actually turns out there is just enough room that you can still get this out of here just by angling it a bit. So that's not even going to be an issue. Very nice. What an easy install. So let's just go ahead and get the cushions on here and bolt it down. And it's probably easier just to get it back out for that. And that's nice and easy. And a backrest. Right, here we are. Let's give this a go. Oh yeah, what an upgrade, and with working suspension. That is so nice. The old Deutz I had years ago, that didn't have working seat suspension, it was just propped up with some wood. That thing would get really rough to drive, but this is gonna make a world of difference. That is so nice. So now that I'm up here, the next thing I really want to get taken care of is the stop for the engine, because I keep having to go down and manually shut it off on the fuel pump itself. This is the stop that you're supposed to pull, that should cut off the fuel on the pump, but it feels like it's just stuck in the dashboard. I was hoping... Right, so I was about to say I was hoping that it was just slightly rusted in there. Well, it was stuck, but seems like that's not the main issue. The cable is broken. It was supposed to have a cable attached to the end here that would pull on the stop lever down on the pump. Right, well, we solved that part of it, so I guess we're gonna need a new cable in this after all. Very well, let's go ahead and get the old one out of here so we can figure out how long it is. I believe the dashboard is just held in place with these two screws. Of course, if I wanted to take it all the way off, I would have to take off the steering wheel and such, but I only need to get to the underside of this so I can loosen up whatever is holding this cable. So I was hoping I could just pull this up a bit, like that. Well, I was actually expecting this to have a nut or something on the underside here, but there's nothing, so maybe we can just undo it from up here. Looks like it's working. Interesting. Now it's just corrosion holding it in. The corrosion is holding it a lot more than the nut was. There we go. Gotta get this rubber cover out of the way, but there's several other reasons I would have to do that anyway as well, because there's several things we have to look at in here. Looks like something's been nesting in there. Could use a good cleanup. Anyway, there is one little holder I have to get off up there, and then we should be able to just pull the whole thing out from down here. Right, get it off the pump in here. Tiny little lock clip on that. Right, here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can find a replacement for this. I might not be able to find something specifically for this old machine, but these types of cables are pretty universal, so I'm just gonna go off the length of this and see if I can find something useful. So in the meantime, while I was getting this off, these things were really getting in my way on both sides actually. So let's go ahead and just get rid of all this stuff, because not only does it not serve a purpose anymore, being that there is no front loader, but also this stuff is causing another issue, or actually not the cylinders themselves, but this hydraulic line that is coming up, the one that I disconnected back there. This machine has always had a bit of a weird throttle, but it turns out that's because this hose is actually hitting the linkage here for the throttle. So you can't let off the throttle all the way because this keeps pushing it out. And it's been doing so long enough that it's rubbed a hole into the hose down here as well. So this is just overall no good. Oh yeah, and over here on the other side, I think we can tell why this doesn't have a front loader anymore. Because now that I look closer at it, not only is this support bent pretty badly, it's no longer attached up here either, and that's because this entire post is also very bent. This is bent forward a lot. This was supposed to be all vertical. This thing has taken quite an impact at some point. This mount right here was supposed to be attached all the way back here. So yeah, none of this is lining up anymore. Let's just get rid of this stuff. We might get some oil out of that. You know, I just realized that this pin that they used in the bottom here, that's actually the one that is supposed to be in the top part of the 3-point linkage on the back. What did they use on the other side? Well, over here it looks like they used the pin for the trailer hitch. I guess this means that ever since someone put a front loader on this thing, it really hasn't been using any of the attachments on the back. But it's cool I have these now. The upper pins, they just look like some homemade stuff. These are also homemade bolts for some reason. Wonder if it's this bent bar that's still putting some pressure on it. There we go. This is just held in place with some string. Now, just for the looks of this, I kind of want to remove this big beam that they put on here as well. This doesn't serve a purpose anymore. This is not original to the tractor. It's something they put on here to hold all that front loader stuff. This part over here, that is original, or at least it's part of this cabin that's on it. So that will stay, but I really would like for this to go. But it's also just another homemade piece of steel. And it's not even cut to length. And also, it's a bit crooked. It's not following the angle of this. This is sitting straight. This is kind of angling upwards. Probably because they only welded it on the top. So I really just have to cut out this one long weld here on both sides, and this whole thing should come off. So let's just do that. I am gonna need this support out of the way so we can get in there and do some cutting. This is really what's supposed to be holding the whole thing, but I'm just going to cut out this bit, then reattach this and cut out the rest. They must have really been struggling to find some of all these big bolts because all of them are made from this threaded rod with a nut welded onto the end. Just gonna clean up these old welds. And no, I'm not trying to match the color here. I just wanted to cover up that red primer, so this is just some green stuff I already had on the shelf. This thing is already looking a lot better without that homemade half front loader on it. And there's so much more room to get to everything here now as well. I'm really pleased with that. Now, I think I said at some point that I was going to hold on to this stuff in case we ever wanted to put a front loader on this thing again. But honestly, I don't think this is worth holding on to. A lot of it was just not terribly well made, and it was also bent and mangled. So if we ever do put a front loader on this, it's not going to be with this stuff. I am going to hold on to those cylinders because there's really nothing wrong with those, but all of that stuff is just going to go in the scrap pile. But you know, now that we are already in the process of cutting off unwanted bits of this machine, let's go ahead and get rid of this whole weird light setup that someone put on here. One light has already fallen off, that fell off on the drive home, and this one is just barely hanging on there. But really, they're not even supposed to be out here in the first place. The original lights were mounted inside of these holes. This here is just a piece of angle iron that someone bolted on and mounted a set of random lights. And I'm not even sure why you would do that, because you can still get those original headlights, and they're not even terribly expensive. So let's just get rid of this stuff. It doesn't look great. I kind of suspected as much, but I did reveal a good bit of rust behind that bracket. But still, it's nice to have that thing gone. And now that that's gone, we can also get rid of all this terrible wiring they have going on. Well, they sure didn't do this any favors by putting that piece of steel on the outside like that. Now, I don't have a new set of lights to go in here just yet because it's just not really a priority right now. But now I can also see that we do have to do a little bit of metal work before we can put lights in this thing. Anyway, it was really nice to get rid of this stuff. It already looks better despite this. Now, another thing that not only looks terrible, but also functions terribly is the exhaust. It is actually pointing straight up right now, but it's misaligned with everything else. The whole thing is bent, and also the pipe down here is completely broken off, so it's smoking more out the bottom of this than it is out the top. See how it's just disconnected from that? But as some of you mentioned, this does actually appear to be an original exhaust because it has this little threaded piece here. The whole exhaust is detachable. You have to take that off to open up this engine cover. So it would have a little hand screw thing here that is gone, but it does have the thread for it. But yeah, this thing is no good anymore, so let's get rid of it. And it just so happened that one of the stores I was buying parts from actually had a complete exhaust for one of these things. And it really didn't cost any more than what it would have otherwise cost me to buy mufflers and pipes and stuff to build my own, so that wouldn't even make sense. I just ordered this, so let's go ahead and check it out. Check that out. It's already coated and everything. That's pretty nice. I hope this fits. You're done. Oh yeah. What an improvement. Now, as cool as it is that this thing came all pre-made, we still have a little bit of work to do because we still got to build this little hand screw handle thing to lock this thing in place. And also, this is Denmark. It's going to be raining 11 months of the year, so we're going to have to close the top of this. And as with all my other vertical exhausts, I want to put a little rain cap on there, just because it looks cool. I think this is just a standard M12 thread. It is. It's going to make this nice and easy to work with. You know, actually, I might be overthinking this. I think I'm just going to leave that as a simple bolt. Like, you have a toolbox on the inside, so you are going to be carrying a tool to get this on and off. And it's not like it's something you have to do all the time anyway, so you know what? There's really no reason to overdo it. We're just going to leave it like that. Let's focus on that rain cap instead. I think I'm going to be aiming to make something kind of like what I did on the old Ford 555 backhoe out there, because the one I have on there actually ended up working really well, and this thing is roughly the same size, so I think that's what we're going for. I have plenty of this 2mm stuff around, so I think we'll just use that. It doesn't really have to be thicker than the exhaust material anyway. Now, of course, I could just go and take the exhaust off the Ford and measure that, but come on, that's no fun. That's what I wanted. Let's get some paint on it and call it done. I don't have any heat-resistant paint on hand, but really it shouldn't be getting extremely hot out here at the end, so I think some regular paint and primer should do fine. So while that paint is drying, we do still have to do a little bit of work to this engine cover as well, because the whole thing is kind of just bouncing around. Now on the smaller models, this whole engine cover is really just sitting here and it's kind of just holding itself down. But on this one, right in here, there's a big springy majigger that is kind of pushing it upwards, so it wants to go up. And it was supposed to have a set of little latches down here that would hold it down, but they are long gone, so I'm gonna have to figure something out there. I'm probably just gonna use a couple of those little rubber hold downs to keep this thing in place. I was just moving this thing around a bit, but it's not really coming down all the way. It will over here, but not over here. The whole thing is getting all misaligned, but it turns out it's touching back here. So in there is that big springy majigger I was talking about, and when we close this down, that folds neatly back on top of the engine. So that's all good. But I could just tell it comes down and it hits that hose clamp on the inlet pipe. Now that's just what happens. I've seen similar things before, but I just had a closer look at this and something's up here. This is not a hose. This is just something that they wrapped around the pipes. There is no way that's gonna seal. This is gonna be sucking air in that did not come through the air filter. We're gonna have to redo that. Well, we're gonna have to move these hose clamps anyway, but let's just see what they got going on here. Ah, come on, that is not gonna work like that. Little bent. Let's just see if we have a hose that'll work for this. Well, all I have is this piece. It's a bit short. Might also be a tight fit, but I think it'll do. I'm gonna have to undo the entire air filter box to move this pipe back and get that piece in there. Might be what the last guys weren't bothered to do. Or maybe it's about to break or something. Who knows? So far it feels pretty good. The horn is held on here as well. Small chance that is working. Actually, there's so much play in this, it might have been enough just to undo the support strut in there. See if we can get this on here. I measured it out to be 67, so we're a couple millimeters too small here. Yeah, it's pretty soft. That'll work. Now, let's turn these things around so we don't have the screws up on top there. Now to see if we can get this back on there while also fitting it into that very tight hose. That was much easier than I feared. Right, there we go. Feeling much better about that connection. Now we gotta see if this thing will close properly. I mean, it's better, but not quite. We're still hitting over there. Yeah, it's still hitting the top of that inlet manifold. Interesting. I wonder how much we can adjust this thing in this little bracket up here. I can see that it's also touching the wall up here. It's most likely not supposed to do that. But it does seem there is some adjustment in these holes, so I'm going to try to bring this out all the way, see what that does. Oh yeah, definitely some adjustment in that. Let's try and bring it all the way out here. Leave it there, see what happens. See what it'll do now. Yes, we're all the way down. And we are just clearing the inlet manifold now. Very nice. Well, that's really cool. Now we can focus on making some latches to keep this down. Oh, and by the way, I should probably just point out, the main reason we had this issue in the first place seems to be because this whole front wall is bent. It's all moving forwards, and that's because it's all rusted out down here in the corner, so these supports are giving in. So if we have this issue again, I'll probably have to just cut off these corners and make some more substantial corner support for this thing, but it looks like we're good for now. So these are the little rubber locking thingies I had in mind. I'm gonna put those right around there. I actually thought I had a new set of these, but apparently I only have these that were taken off something else. But I mean, it's good enough for this. This is not what would have been on it originally, but it is roughly the same idea. And this is a pretty hefty lump of steel down here, so I'm not even going to try and do anything fancy by drilling and tapping and making it detachable. I'm just going to weld these guys right on here. And again, I'm not trying to color match this. I just want to cover up this red primer. So I'm just using some stuff off the shelf, just to try and make it look decent from a distance. There we go. Now this thing is nicely held in place and it's not going to be bouncing around like it was. That's going to be pretty nice. Now we can finally put our exhaust together and get this thing on there as well. Oh yeah. Man, this whole thing is looking better and better. Now one more eyesore that is really easy to do something about is going to be those two mirrors, or at least what remains of the mirrors. Let's get that mangled stuff off there, and I'm just going to check if I have a couple of old mirrors to throw on there instead, so I can actually get some use out of those mounts. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. That's even worse. Violent. Get out of here. Well, I did actually find a set of mirrors. One is from the old McGear's, and this one, I don't even remember what that's from, but they are kind of similar, so let's just put these on there. Conveniently, this one already has a mounting hole up here. I think that's going to work perfectly for this. I suppose I don't really need mirrors on this machine, but now that the mounts are here, we may as well use them. Well, there we go. All these little things are really adding up, making this look like something that might actually work. All right, everyone, it's a couple of days later and I have a new stop cable, but I also have company. Check out what has just showed up in my driveway. You know I love me an old Mercedes. And this one has not just the OM617, but the 617A, the turbocharged version. Fantastic engine, this. Well, that could really only be one person showing up here in something like this. It is, of course, Seppo from the Seaside Garage.
Hello.
He's out here to test drive my Humvee for a series he's doing, where he's showing off some of the more weird, special, and unusual vehicles that he finds around the country. So if you want to see his opinion on this big old truck, you can check it out over on his channel. I'm going to leave a link for that down in the description. All right, so while he's doing that, let's go ahead and get this thing on there. Now, I think this is actually for a Ferguson, but it does have the right length, so hopefully we can make this work. Well, I guess first we got to clean out under here. There's a whole rat's nest and other goodies up under that. Oh look, we even have the rat itself. Right, so one of the few differences between the old cable and the new one is that the new one is a 12 millimeter up here, where the old one was just a 10 millimeter. So I need to open this hole up a little bit. That's just possible. That should do it. Try to feed this through. Now I'm gonna want the nut and washer up here right away. Couldn't see what I was doing, so I had to move out here. I'm not going to tighten any of this yet. For now, I just want to hold it in place. Haha! This is going to work. All right, so down here where the wire was attached to the stop lever on the pump, it was hooked onto this tiny little thing. See if the camera will focus on that. And this had a really small C-clip right on this edge. Now, not only have I lost that clip, but also that was very much a pain to get off, and I can only imagine it's going to be even worse to try and get that back on again. So I actually think I'm going to redesign this real quick, because it looks like we have enough room to put a bolt head on it instead. So it's a 6, and lever is roughly 3. So another 3 for washers. Right, so we leave 6 on here. Yeah. All right, this should work. It's also so much easier to get in here and work with this stuff now that that old front loader is gone. Just gonna tie this up so I don't have to fight that spring. I have to get the gloves off for this small stuff. Oh yeah, that's gonna work great. Just gotta get this in there and figure out the adjustment on this, and we should be good. I'm hoping I can just do a simple bend in this wire and that'll keep it in place. All right, so now we pull our stop. Oh yeah. Nice. So now we can go ahead and get those holders and stuff bolted down and bolt the dashboard back in place, and we should be good to go. Or good to stop this time. This is one of those things that's actually easier to film than it is to physically get to it. All right, people, I think it's about time to do a little bit of testing. Not only do we have to see if that engine stop is gonna work, but there's been so much happening to this machine since it drove in here. So we gotta see if everything is still working and make sure things are staying in place. I gotta get a feel for that new seat, and most importantly, we have to hear this new exhaust and watch that rain cap in action. Let's take this thing for a drive. Now, can we shut it off from in here? Oh yeah. Sweet. Right, well, I am really pleased with how this thing is driving around now, and also with the small things we did to update the look of this thing. Now, I know it still doesn't look great, but it certainly looks a lot better than it did a few weeks ago. And actually, I think we coincidentally fixed another issue that I wasn't even entirely sure about, because this thing felt like it was a little bit slow on the throttle when you were trying to accelerate, but this lever, the stop lever, is now much further back. I think the old cable was actually holding that halfway, so it was partially pulling the stop all the time. So it probably hasn't been getting all the fuel it was supposed to get, because now the throttle is very responsive. So this was just overall a good day. Now, I know a lot of what we did this time around was partially cosmetic, but we also did get to fix a lot of the little issues that this thing had. But we do still have a bunch of work to do here on the back. We still have to figure out our whole hitch situation and also do something about all these loosely hanging hydraulic hoses we have back here. But we are going to be saving that stuff for another time, because I'm going to be ending this video here. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching along, and I'll see you in the next one.